guys, it's Jessii Vee, and today we're going to be talking about shadows because we all have them, which is kind of creepy because every single person watching right now, even you all have shadows. So this video will apply to everybody. Because sometimes you watch and you're like, oh, that's kind of scary, but it doesn't apply to me. Today, this applies to you. Anyways, before we get started, I have a couple announcements. The first one is that we have a sale on our bath fizzies. These are the fizzies that have toys inside of them. One is a magic wand, one is an ice cream, one has my hair on it. I'm so sorry, you're not getting this one. But we have a few more of these left and they're both on sale. So if you would like one, I've linked it down below. The colors are crazy in the bath. It's amazing. And secondly, if you would like one of my new sparkly gummy bear necklaces, I have also linked those down below. They are going so quickly, so thank you guys so much. They're just so fun. I love making weird and strange necklaces. All right, so without further ado, let's get into this video about shadows. Just think back to your own childhood and the time when you first discovered your own shadow. You might remember how this black figure which followed you around, constantly imitating your behavior. It seemed like a wondrous thing. Because it imitates life, many children think that shadows are actually living beings, especially when you're super young because it's hard to understand. I've seen so many videos online of like little babies and little toddlers seeing their shadow for the first time and it terrifies them. So before I get into a horrifying creepypasta, we're gonna talk a little bit about shadow superstitions. Some people think that shadows are a representation of the soul or even a manifestation of the soul itself. The ancient Greeks believed that whomever entered the sanctuary of Zeus on Mount Lycaeus would lose his shadow and therefore was doomed to die within the year. The Greeks definitely thought that your shadow contained your soul and that no one could live very long once that soul was separated from the body. So if you don't see your shadow one day, you might die soon. People think that if you drop something and it breaks over top of your shadow, your soul would be harmed. Hundreds of years ago, the shadow was even used as some sort of witch doll or voodoo doll. They would try to prick someone's shadow with a spear or a sword to actually cause that victim great pain, which is super messed up to me. Another very weird practice that comes from history is from southeastern Europe. The people of Greece sometimes use shadows as a sacrifice when the foundation of a new building is being laid. This can be done by laying the foundation stone upon a man's shadow. This sacrifice is believed to give stability and strength to the building they just made. But the man whose shadow was used for this secret sacrifice is supposed to die within the year because they used his shadow. In many folk tales, the soul appears as a shadow long after the person has died. There are many legends which describe how graveyards are haunted by gray and black shades at night. Shades which clearly have the silhouette of human beings and move around like humans as well. So in some cases, the shadow is seen as an omen of death. The person who encounters such a shadow, like if you're at a graveyard and you see a shadow of a human that's not yourself, you're supposed to die within a few days, or someone you know is supposed to die within a few days. There's this Dutch folk tale where a couple of men are ice skating and think they are being followed by dark spirits. They go faster and faster, but the dark spirits keep chasing them. But as it turns out, at the end, the so-called spirits chasing them are just their own shadows. So there are literally so many old rhymes and folk tales about people thinking their shadows are something dark and scary. There's also this superstition that says if you place a candle over top of your shadow and ask your shadow a question, it might respond. But if you speak to it for too long, it might take over your life because your shadow is just a shade of a human. It wants to become real. So don't talk to your shadow for too long because it might just, become you, which is weird because it kind of is you, but not completely yet. Still, many people today don't feel comfortable amongst their shadow. And so the shadows keep haunting us till death do us part. I was kind of freaked out even doing research for this video because my shadow's everywhere. I see my shadow over there. Alright, so I'm gonna read you guys a creepypasta. It's called My Daughter Talks to Her Shadow. Now, I never read creepypastas word for word because it takes a really long time. I sort of just sum them up for you guys. So here we go. This is about a father who noticed that his daughter was constantly talking to her shadow. And at first he thought that maybe it was some sort of weird game that she was playing. His daughter didn't have any friends and maybe this was her way of coping with that. But it soon started to become a little too strange. She would talk to her shadow for hours and hours on end, and soon it started to take up most of her day. But whenever the father would suggest that maybe she would stop, his daughter would become really angry and would refuse to. One day something incredibly terrifying happened. He was in the kitchen preparing them dinner, and his daughter was in the living room talking to her shadow as she usually did. But something about that particular conversation seemed different. She sounded as if she was trying to keep her voice down, as if they were exchanging some sort of secret she didn't want the father to hear. So he asked her what they were talking about, but she didn't respond. She just kept talking to her shadow. But that's when the father heard it. A low, deep, creepy voice coming from the living room. So he started to look around the house, wondering what the heck it was. He knew it definitely wasn't the voice of his daughter. So he started to think, could it be the voice of her shadow? But he knew that thought was absurd, so he instantly just didn't think about it. A month went by and he never heard that creepy low voice again. But his daughter was still talking to her shadow on the daily. So finally, he decided to take her to see a psychologist. When the father picked her up from her first session, his daughter's eyes were bloodshot, as if she had been crying for a while. But she would not tell him what happened at the appointment. She just kept talking to her shadow. So the father stormed into his room out of frustration, and just as he sat down on his bed, he heard that low voice again. He turned around, and behind him was this tall, gray, shadowy figure that was his exact height and build. He looked at it in disbelief as it started speaking to him.
What's wrong? Can't handle finally seeing us?
The figure taunted him, drawing closer, and its voice sounded exactly like his. So he asked the figure who it was.
You don't get to speak to me or to any of us. Not after the way that you've treated us. All of you have been taking us for granted for centuries.
The shadow suddenly slammed the father against the wall.
And finally your daughter acknowledges us, and the first thing you try to do is stop her?
Without warning, it scratched viciously all across his chest, making him fall to the floor. And ever since then, he left his daughter and her shadow in peace. He canceled future appointments with the psychologist and never bothered her about it again. It's what their shadows would want. And that's how the story ends. So, I guess the story is trying to portray shadows as actual living beings that want to be noticed and acknowledged and spoken to, but they sound kind of violent, and I don't like them very much. Anyway, so guys, those are all the shadow things we're gonna be talking about today. If I missed any really interesting facts or anything from folklore or history, definitely comment it down below. And if you want me to try and do the candle on the shadow and speak to it on my vlog channel, go check out that channel because I do all of the weird stuff I talk about here. So, and don't forget the bath fizzies are on sale, and I do have a bunch more gummy bear necklaces. All the links are down below, but I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!